Good morning. I recently came across some kind of sad news saying that the retail department store Neiman Marcus may be filing for bankruptcy. They have stores in more than 30 states. It's become a large chain department store. But when I was growing up in Houston, Neiman Marcus was just an amazing place. They had their flagship there in Dallas, and then they opened a store in Houston. And I never really bought a lot of things from Neiman Marcus. That was a little out of my price range. But just going to the store was an experience. It was so clean, and everything looked so nice, and everything was so amazing. Now, just going and walking through the store was an experience. Now, I went to start serving a little country church when I was 19 years old. It was 1973. I went to Richards, Texas. And it was while I was there that I realized how much I needed to be reading, and reading a variety of books in order to be growing in my understanding of the world, as well as how to run a church and business principles. It was in 1974 that Stanley Marcus came out with a book, Minding the Store. And it was all about Neiman Marcus. I learned so much. Neiman Marcus was actually started back in 1907. Started by Herbert Marcus and his sister, Carrie Marcus Neiman, and her husband, A.L. Neiman. It was the three of them that came together with this idea of starting a department store that was very high-end, something special that really you didn't find down in the South. No, you found it in New York or maybe in San Francisco, but not in the South. This was going to be something special. They really did work on it and created this iconic store. Even carried ready-made clothes, which in 1907 was unusual. Almost everything was made by a tailor. No, they began to push something totally new. By 1950, Stanley Marcus, Herbert's son, he had taken over. He was now the chairman of the board and the CEO who ran Neiman Marcus. And Stanley was such an innovator and a fascinating guy. In his book, he told a couple stories that I read back when I was 20 years old that I've never forgotten. It turned out that he said, sometimes people working in Neiman Marcus begin to get an air that they were somehow better than others. And they began qualifying their customers. People came to shop in Neiman Marcus. Well, they were dressed to the nines and looked great. But Stanley believed everybody was important. Everybody should be treated with respect. Whether they could come in and spend $5 or $50,000, he felt it didn't matter. You treat everybody the same. Well, one day he noticed in the jewelry department, there was a lady who'd come in. She was dressed rather plainly. She was clean and nice, but she was dressed rather plainly, and she even had with her own sack lunch. And she wanted to come over and look at some jewelry, some diamond necklaces. Well, the man who was the salesman there behind the counter, he wasn't giving her the time of day. He could see she wasn't going to be able to buy a diamond necklace. But when Stanley Marcus saw it, he immediately went over and stepped in. You can imagine how shocked this man was to suddenly see, here is the president and CEO of Neiman Marcus waiting on this lady. And he was saying, what can I do for you? What would interest you? She was choosing different diamond necklaces, and Stanley got them out no matter what. And she looked at them and enjoyed trying them on. It really only went on about 15 minutes. She was easy to make up her mind, and she said, I'll take that one. And then she gave him his sack lunch. Her sack lunch, it turned out, was full of $100 bills, not lunch. She paid for it in cash, took her diamond necklace, and very happily left the store with her purchase. Needless to say, this salesman was stunned. Stanley said, I knew I'd made my point. You don't qualify your customers. You treat everyone the same. It doesn't matter what. They all should be treated with dignity. I never forgot that important thing. Everybody, regardless of how they look or how much they can spend, everybody should be treated with a real sense of kindness and love. That's exactly the way that Jesus did it. But then there was another time. Stanley Marcus had become so very well known. There was a captain of a Navy ship who invited him to come out on board and take a tour of the ship, and Stanley was excited about that. When he got out on the Navy ship, he saw that all the brass was beautiful, polished to just gleaming. And Stanley asked the captain, he said, "The brass looks so beautiful on the ship. How often do you polish it?" And the captain looked surprised and he said, "We polish it every day." Because the moment you stop polishing the brass, it starts to grow dull. He knew then what we all know today, and that is you have to always be polishing the brass in order to keep it shining brightly. And I think about that with our values. What are we doing to continually look at our values and polish those things in our life that mean so much so that we really can shine well? You know, at St. Luke's for almost 20 years now, at every single staff meeting, we have a set of principles and values that we embrace. And we will look at one of them every single week, over and over again for almost 20 years, because we know that just because we said something once doesn't make it so forever. You have to be polishing the brass in order for it to shine brightly. We've studied the Disney principles. We've studied Neiman Marcus. We have studied Ritz-Carlton. But it always comes back to the Bible. It comes back to looking at what Jesus taught us to do and how to treat one another. And if we will start every day with a daily devotional looking at the values of Christ, then we are polishing the brass in our own life. And that will help us to shine, to do the things that matter the most. I hope today, regardless of whether you're working on the front lines or whether you're having to shelter in place, you'll take time to polish the brass. It'll help you be who God has called you to be. Go out, be safe, and make it a great day.